Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Teach series. Today, our guest is Mike Hammontree. Mike has been featured before on social media and entrepreneurship. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about travel. So, Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Mike Hammontree. I'm 22. I'm from East Lansing, Michigan, but I live in Los Angeles right now. And I run a digital marketing company, among other things, but that's my main focus.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so, when did you start traveling? Like, first start getting into it?
Okay. So, I mean, I know I used to drive to Florida every year with my family, but I don't really count
Hmm.
that. I did that for literally my entire childhood. Like that was our spring break. But I would say when I really started was I think when Vine started to pick up a little bit, I had a lot of different Vine events that I would go to. And so I remember I drove to New York for the first time, but then when I really started traveling a lot was after I flew to Orlando for an event. And I think that it started to pick up more and more after that. Like I didn't travel again for like a year. And then I flew to LA for a meeting. And then I went straight to Vegas after that. And then I came home. I remember in a week later, I booked a random ticket, went back to Vegas. And then it just started picking up more and more and more after that. And I just remember going crazy shortly after that because I realized that I was learning so much and experiencing so many different things by
Hmm.
traveling, to all these different places. And so I'd like purposely be setting meetings, all around the United States just so I could get out and travel and also miss high school at the time. I was still in high school. So I would dip and leave high school as much as I could.
Awesome. So, kind of with that, what's the favorite place you've been to? So, your all-time favorite.
So all-time favorite is always going to be Santorini, Greece. I think that was like my all-time favorite for like the place itself, just everything about it. As for like experience though, I think my favorite experience was when I went to Barcelona like recently. Actually right before Corona and everything happened, we were at a music festival in Barcelona of all places, of all things that we could be doing. We're at a music festival, like giant festival full of people. And so we were there and we left 2 days before quarantine happened. And so if we didn't come back, we would have been stuck on a military base for like 2 weeks. So it would have been awful, but that was my favorite experience. But Santorini, Greece is definitely my favorite place.
Cool. So, on the opposite end, what was your least favorite experience or least favorite place you've gone to?
Ah, man, it's hard to say. I have to say though, like I've been to Utah many, many times, and I don't know what like nothing against Utah or people from Utah or anything like that. I just feel like I've never had a good experience going to Utah. It just seems like I don't really know. I just maybe I haven't done the right things yet. Like I know it's beautiful in some areas and I know like I've always wanted to go snowboarding in Park City, but every time I've gone it's just been kind of like not much to do. So if I had to pick a place, I would say maybe Utah. Because in most of the other places I've traveled, I've had somewhat of a good experience.
Okay. So would you say you do more traveling abroad or within the United States, like back and forth?
Definitely both. More recently, it's actually more abroad. Like I haven't gone. I've pretty much, I would say, the last 2 years or year and a half, I've kind of stuck between California, Vegas, and Michigan. Like those are only places within the states that I actually travel and stay in. Like I've been to, like I was just in Denver the other day. I was in Minneapolis not that long ago. But other than those, and those were like less than a day trips. Those were kind of like just a stopover. Um, so more, I would say, I think I've been to like 35 states and maybe 15 countries or so. So I mean, it's getting up there in countries, and I like that travel way more because I like to
Yeah.
actually have a cultural experience when I travel. And it's completely different when you go, out of the states.
Okay, so can you name like every place you've been? Like, do you remember them all like in chronological order, or like what do
Okay.
you remember most about a lot of the trips you've been on?
So I'll I'll name. I wouldn't be able to do states. I think that I mean, there's just pretty much all the main states. Like as long as it's not like a flyover state or Alaska, I've been to pretty much all the main states that have big cities. As for countries, though, I can definitely do it in order. I remember I left the country, went to Canada. That was the first time I technically left the country. Then I went to Munich, Germany, Rome, Italy, Santorini, Greece, Paris, France, Iceland, and I went like all over Iceland. And then I remember the second time I left after that, I believe was the Bahamas. and then actually no, that's not in order. I went to Hong Kong, mainland China, Japan. I stopped in Hawaii, but obviously it's not out of the country. And then I went to the Bahamas right after that. Uh, and then I'm trying to think. I think I went to Amsterdam, so Netherlands, and then I believe I had already been to Italy, but then I went to Milan and so sick, by the way. That was so sick. Uh, Paris again, but that doesn't count because it's the same country. And then I went to Amsterdam again, and then most recently I went to Spain. So I think that's in order of. I mean, some of those are the same country, but in order of leaving the country, I believe that was it. As for like you mentioned, like memorable, like what do I remember the most about the trips? I would say if I had to pick like top five, Iceland was just insane. Like every bit of the country felt like I was on another planet. Like you could have dropped me on another planet, and that's what it would have felt like. Because just for example, like we went to the Blue Lagoon, and they put it into, I mean, it's natural, so they put the resort around a natural spa, like
Yeah.
warm spring or
Yeah.
whatever. And the surrounding area was lava rock as the base layer of the bed, of like the ground, and then it was moss that grew on top of it, so it was like super bouncy, but it looked like you were on it just looked like you're on another planet. So I remember that specifically. Santorini, Greece, it just felt like a movie. Everywhere you went, it was absolutely beautiful. It didn't matter what part of the island you were on. It just felt like, it's what you see on Instagram. It's much more beautiful in person, obviously. Um, Japan, I just remember the people. Like the people were so incredibly nice. Every single person that you talked to or interacted with, they were always nice, and it seemed like they were genuinely wanting to help you. And I think that's a big part of their culture, right? Like that's always been a big part of their culture. It's just like full of respect, and you really notice that when you're there. Trying to think what else. Barcelona, of course, for the reasons I mentioned. It was just a fantastic trip. Like we got invited out by this music festival, and so we had basically VIP everything, and everything they gave to us was pretty much, we basically like ran Barcelona, like the best clubs, like best everything. We were blessed enough to just have that all given to us, and so it was a very cool experience. And we got to go on stage. Like I went on stage with Zed's Dead, and my friends went on stage with Rez and some of these other big DJs. And it was just a very unique experience that I didn't expect to ever happen in my lifetime. So that was really cool. And I'm trying to think. Fifth though was, and maybe this is actually first, was when I was in Hong Kong. It's very westernized, so it's fine, and a lot of people speak English. But the second you cross the border into mainland China, it's just a whole like other world. Like they don't speak English. I remember I had a sticker on my shirt that was for the taxi ride. And well, actually, let me backtrack. This is a little bit crazy part of the story. When I went to China, because I had a meeting in mainland China, I had to go there twice. To get there, I had to Uber to the airport or to the Hong Kong airport. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, Hong Kong is not a part of China. They're trying to get it back, but Hong Kong is not a part of China. They don't want to be a part of China. Either way, so had to Uber from the hotel to the Hong Kong airport. I then had to try to talk to people at the airport somehow and get a private charter service from the airport to the like border patrol at China, like the mainland China, and Shenzhen is the city, which is huge, by the way. Like it's big, much bigger in LA, and LA is super spread out. And once you get there, then you have to somehow make it through customs, and then once you're past customs, at the airport, I bought a taxi ride as well. Like you buy a taxi ride and it'll get you to your final destination. And so then once I had done that, I was just walking around like a fish out of water, looking, like pointing, like waiting for somebody to come and grab me so I could go, to where I was supposed to go. Cause I couldn't speak anything. Nobody spoke English. And so then they grabbed me, put me in a taxi, and took me to the office building. And then somehow to get back, I had to have somebody at the office call me what's called a Didi, which is basically the Uber of China. And then that took me back to the border patrol, and it was insane. But that's basically the process, and I had to do the whole entire process backwards, go back to the airport, and then airport back to the hotel. Crazy stuff, but that's what I remember about some of the places I've been.
So how long did that whole process take there?
Oh geez, must have been 3.5 hours or more, like easily just one way. I'm guessing, because it took a long time to get to the airport. Even when it was streamlined, even if I knew, like the second time when I knew what I was doing, it still was probably 3.5 hours just to go one way.
Wow. Yeah.
You know.
So kind of going off that, are there any other travel horror stories? So
Oh,
what's your
well,
least favorite part about traveling? We'll start with that.
least favorite part is honestly I think it's just how exhausted you get, like the jet lag and everything. Because
Mhm.
I'm like I've always been a very sensitive person when it comes to like the way that I feel. If I'm tired or if I didn't eat well enough or whatever it is, I definitely feel just like kind of terrible overall. And so when I travel, sometimes I forget to eat right, which is one reason that I try to fly business class international, because it'll force me to eat and it forces me to like at least try to get some sleep, because otherwise I'm literally going to ruin my trip, especially if it's only like a couple day trip. I have to make sure I eat and sleep. So that's my least favorite part. I don't necessarily like everything leading up to the plane. I don't mind being on the plane. It's not my favorite thing, but it's a matter of I hate going through security and waiting at the airport, especially if they don't have a Sky Club. I know I sound spoiled, but this is just this is what I've become accustomed to at this point. So all that kind of stuff will bother me, but that's just a little caveat to to the actual luxury of traveling. So, but that's my least favorite aspect. As for a horror story, it actually leads back to that China aspect. I didn't really mind the process of going, through, going through customs and doing that whole thing to get to the office. It wasn't really a big deal. It was just time consuming, and that
Yeah.
was the reason I was there, so it was fine. But so that trip though, I went to Hong Kong, went to China, back and forth. A couple times I was staying in Hong Kong. I went to go book a flight on Delta back home, and I couldn't get a flight out of Hong Kong for some reason. Like they just didn't really have it, and I mainly fly Delta, and so I was like, whatever. Like this is it's an opportunity to see somewhere else. So I booked a random flight on I don't even know, like HK Express or something. I don't know, and I booked it to Tokyo because I was like, all right, instead of flying all the way back from Hong Kong to the United States, I'm gonna stop over in all the islands back to the United States, like mainland. And so I flew from China to Tokyo. Everything was great. I got first row on the plane. The flight was great. I got to Tokyo. I checked into like this really, really cool hotel. Like not only did like I said, they were super respectful and really cool, but it was like the most high tech hotel I've ever been to, because obviously Tokyo seems to be ahead of the game when it comes to those things. But really cool hotel, super cool experience. I went and explored the city the next morning, and it was overall a really cool experience. I remember it was close to my birthday, and I like mentioned that to somebody. Like just they were like, "Well, why are you here?" or whatever. I was like, "Well, I'm here, just to explore, but I gotta go back home because I'm gonna celebrate my birthday there." And I was at Nobu in Tokyo, and they randomly just brought out like an entire huge like celebration platter. Everybody from the hotel or from the restaurant came and celebrated with me. And I was like by myself, by the way. Like I don't know if I mentioned that, but I was completely by myself this entire trip. And so it was really cool to like have that like almost camaraderie. And I was talking to a guy from Taipei, and it was just very cool. So Tokyo was a good experience, but where it gets bad is actually it doesn't get bad yet. I flew business class from Tokyo to Hawaii. Again, amazing experience. I had 14 hours in Hawaii to like make the best of it. I went to this hotel that my parents had stayed at previously, and it was like super cool hotel. I was chilling out. Went snorkeling. I went and saw. I didn't know this at the time, but I randomly went snorkeling at the beach that my grandma and grandma met at like 50 plus 60 years ago or whatever. That was really cool. Found that out later, and then about like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., I'm taking a nap right after I get out. Right after I'm done snorkeling, I start to have a headache, and I'm like, oh, like shoot, this is where my trip gets bad, and I'm just slowly feeling worse and worse and worse throughout the trip. I'm like, what just happened? Like, was something in the water? Like, what happened? It didn't hit me until I got out of the water.
Mhm.
So I go and take a nap at the hotel, and I'm like just chilling out in the sun. I have a pina colada. Like I'm feeling even worse, and pina colada did not help. And then I go, and it's time for me to go to the airport after watching the sunset. I go to the airport, and it just slowly gets worse and worse. I'm in the Sky Club, like feeling absolutely terrible, like trying to drink as much water as possible. I get on the plane, and I've never ever felt this bad before. And I have a 6 hour flight. They don't have business class in this, so it wasn't even like I could lay down. And I don't know how to describe it, but I had the worst. I found out later I had like the worst flu that I've ever had. Maybe it was Corona 2 years ago. Like I don't know, but it was really bad. And so that entire flight was awful, and I landed in LA, and I still wasn't home yet. Like I didn't live in LA at this time. And so I had to then go to the airport. Luckily, the Sky Club there, I wasn't supposed to be let in under 21 at the time. Luckily, they let me in, and I was able to shower and eat. Like, if that didn't happen, I would have felt like literally terrible. I would have felt absolutely awful. It was just like totally meant to be that they even let me in, because I knew I wasn't supposed to be there, but they let me in. And so yeah, showered, ate, got on the plane. I slept the entire way home. And then even when I got to Detroit, I still wasn't finished. At this point, I'm feeling way worse, like 5 times worse. And keep in mind, I barely slept. You know, I only slept 3 hours on that plane. And then I have another hour flight and an hour layover before I get to Lansing finally. And then I go home, and I basically, I had 5 days to recover before I went on a 8-day cruise. And so I somehow, like, I just poured as much, you know, water and fruit and like everything I could possibly think of that was healthy into my body for the next 5 days. And then I got on a plane still coughing my head off for, you know, the next 8 days. I was on a cruise that was actually very fun. But yeah, that was so worst travel experience, long story, but that was it. Basically just getting the flu and feeling awful.
So did everything get resolved by the time that cruise came around,
Yeah,
or
so I
were
don't
you
think I
still
was
sick
sick.
for the beginning part?
I don't think I was sick anymore, but I had like a really bad cough. Like, it was really annoying.
Mhm.
But I didn't feel like sick anymore, which was good. So I somehow salvaged that and made myself better. Cause I was drinking like, you know, 3 packets of Emergency every day. I was just eating as much fruit and like greens and drinking as much water. So somehow it helped. So if you're sick, you know, do all that.
Yeah. I haven't been sick myself on a trip yet, but I'm sure it'll come my way sometime. So I don't want to get the
Yeah.
karma set up too bad for myself. But what's on your travel bucket list? So what's something you want to do but haven't done yet, as far as like traveling?
Ooh, there's definitely a lot. I mean, speaking in terms of what I really want to do, I mean, I would love to make it to all 7 continents. Technically 8. I don't know how to describe this, but I found out not that long ago that New Zealand technically isn't a part of any continent, but it's big enough to not be an island. So I'm qualifying it as 8 continents that I got to go to. New Zealand, Australia, South America, Africa, and Antarctica are left for me. So got to go to those. Um, that's always been a bucket list. And people always ask me, how are you going to get to Antarctica? And it's one of 2 ways. And I'm leaning more towards one of them, but you can either go on a cruise, which is the easy way to do it. And it sounds super sick. You go out of Chile and then you stop in the Falkland Islands. You can mess around with penguins and stuff, which I've always wanted to do anyway. So that's sick. And then you go to Antarctica. So probably gonna do that. The other way is to charter a jet, and I feel like it's just not needed because the cruise sounds better anyway. So gonna do that. That's definitely on my bucket list. Always wanted to go to the Maldives. Always wanted to go to Dubai, and I'm trying to think. I feel like those are the main 3. Always want to go to Fiji, and other than that, I mean, I feel like it's just a matter of I want to go everywhere. But but if I had to name a couple, it's probably that.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to share on the subject of travel here?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like my biggest advice is, you know, get out there and see the world, because I can't tell you how many times I have a conversation, like it seems cliche and whatever, but I have so many conversations of people that have never left the state, let alone, some people don't even leave their city, but there are a lot of people that don't leave the state, and there are tons and tons of people that have not left the country. And a lot of the general kind of conversation that I seem to have is they always say, oh, well, it's super expensive to travel international, and, you know, I just can't afford that, or like, I wish. And I'm like, stop wishing and go do it, because it's not like you have to, you know, be bougie and go to these places. You can get a flight on Google Flights if you check. You know, for example, people like, shout out to my people in Michigan. If you live here, not now, of course, but when things are back to normal, you can drive to Toronto, which is 3.5 hours, and the flights are like a quarter of the price. They're like $250 and you can go to Paris, like round trip. It's insane. And so if you want to go somewhere, just look around, do your research, stay at a hostel that's $20 a night, you know, save up some money. You can go to Europe for less than $600 for like a week and a half. Like, I promise you, if you do your research or make friends, like when we were in Barcelona, we had friends there, and we stayed at the most expensive house in Barcelona. It's like $100 million house. We stayed there for free because we have friends. we just made friends. So my advice is don't let the price tag, sticker shock scare you. Do your research, make it work, get out and see the world. And yeah, I mean, experience the culture. It's the best way to learn. It's meeting other people, having conversations, and seeing different culture.
Awesome, awesome. So where can people follow up like on your travels? What's your
Yeah.
Instagram, social media?
Yeah, my Instagram is just at Mike H. It's MIKEH, like you'd expect, and everything else is pretty much the same. My TikTok is similar. You just type in Mike Hammontree on Google, it'll come up. So
Awesome. Alrighty. Um, well, if there's nothing else you wanted to share with us, thank you so much for your time. It's great to have you on again. We've been wanting to talk about the travel for a while now. So thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on new interviews. Hit the like button if you like the video and follow us on social media too. We'll have everything Mike mentioned linked below in the description. So if you want to be featured in an interview, also reach out to us on our website. Thanks again. Have a great night.